Hey everyone, my name is Mike Vaughn. I'm a writer for Geek Vibes Nation. I'm also the author of The Ultimate Guide to Strange Cinema.
And I'm Dylan Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director for geekvibesnation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast.
And welcome to a new Video Addict new release roundup. If you're new here, welcome. What we do is we go back and forth. We talk about the latest home video releases and we review them. Sometimes we read them for filth, but we always have a good time. With that being said, I'm going to start with one that I was actually really excited that this was getting a 4K release, and that is Scrooged. And that is such a classic. I mean, I'm not going to go super in depth with my review because I assume everybody's seen it, but it's Richard Donner's really amazing modern for the time take on Christmas Carol. There's the inside. Of course, no digital copy in this, but if you order it, you'll have. But yeah, it is. It's great. It just has Bill Murray kind of at his peak. It has Karen Allen again. These actors that were kind of at their peak of their career, and it's a really fun kind of modern retelling of the Dickens classic in a more cynical 80s Masters of the Universe, Wall Street-ish kind of way. And I really like how Donner is able to kind of straddle that line between satirical, like absurdist, but also like really bring the heart and the tugging at your heartstrings kind of thing. I love how it's kind of a meta. They're doing a old school production of A Christmas Carol within the movie, and this is what kind of prompts Bill Murray's character to be visited by three very colorful ghosts, and I love again how they're updated. One's a cabbie, for example, that's like just pretty amazing. As for how it looks, I was very disappointed with Paramount's Rosemary's Baby, but I have to say they redeemed themselves here. It really looks nice. This was shot on 35 millimeter, so you have that nice kind of film grain. Everything looks very natural. Nothing looks too dark or too bright. It has that really beautiful balance. I also really couldn't see too much in the way of like over HDRing or like black levels look really nice. Again, everything looks crisp. It's almost like nearly flawless. I compared this to the Blu-ray, and yeah, I have to say it's leagues above. If there is ever a time where you need convincing to upgrade to 4K, this is it. So we have, as far as special features go, the Donner commentary is ported over. Do have some new featurettes that are really nice. And again, I love anytime like we can get some like new archival material, just a little bit something special to justify kind of upgrading, which isn't the case for one of my later titles, but this is it. This really is good. It's a classic movie. Some people don't like that we're heading into Christmas. I do. I know you do.
Mhm.
I'm kind of surprised that my tree's not already up. Give it a week or two, and it will be. But yeah, Scrooged. We're kicking off the holiday season. I think it's a must own.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Right before I stepped into this recording, I was decorating my tree with my wife. So that's like as soon as Halloween's over, it's like, all right, let's get to cheesy Hallmark watching. Let's get the whole nine yards. So
Nice.
Speaking of my wife, she really wanted to purchase this film last year, and I was like, if you could just wait, next year's an anniversary. I just have a feeling it's going to be released on 4K. So I've been redeemed. She waited patiently. Now we've gotten it in. So we're very excited to revisit that for the holiday suit because like I said, we're getting full into gear, and I'm glad to hear that it's a good transfer because Paramount and is can be a little inconsistent, like you said, but I'm glad to hear that this is one of the good ones. So I'm glad,
Yeah.
very happy about that. I'm going to kick off my first pair of titles with two kind of family oriented titles from Shout Studios. And the first one I'm going to talk about is one I'm super excited about because I love these characters. This is the complete crackling collection of Wallace and Gromit.
Nice.
They I love these two. I love these characters. I saw like Curse of the Were-Rabbit at a drive-in back in the day. It's so much fun. And this, I've been kind of dreaming of a collection like this on Blu-ray, and glad to have it. This has the 4 half-hour specials like that they did. It's a Grand Day Out, The Wrong Trousers, A Close Shave, and A Matter of Loaf and Death. And these are really fun. It's like some of the classics. I believe it's A Close Shave. You get to meet Shaun the Sheep, who will be getting his own collection in December from Shout Studio. So very excited about that as well. But along with those 4 original specials, you get 10 shorts, which usually run about 2 to 5 minutes long. So there's about 10 of those, which run about a half hour in total. So altogether, a good, well-rounded collection for Wallace and Gromit fans. The 4 main specials, I think they look really good. You can tell that they're a little bit older animation, and the source maybe hasn't. It's not like a 4K restoration or anything, but it looks very nice. The 10 actual shorts, like the crackling contraptions, was what they call it. Those, I believe, might be upscales to HD, considering the source, because they look a little bit rougher than the 4 main specials. They look good, and I'm glad to have them in high definition, but I think it's likely that they're upscales, but I'm glad to have them. But I just want to put that out there. But overall, super glad to have this collection. There's no special features, unfortunately, which I would have loved, but just to have all of these in high definition, very excited about that. And my next title, I was very excited about. I'm going to kind of do some comparing and contrasting with some other releases I have. This is the complete series deluxe edition of Alf from Shout Studios. So I actually owned this on DVD prior most of these. So I had these original 4 releases from Lionsgate back from the 2000s. So 4 through 1 here. And so I was interested whenever this was released, but I was curious what they could improve upon. And the answer is a lot. So the difference between these two sets, the first major difference is, so this does have the first 4 seasons right here. That's the complete run of the original series is 4 seasons. And these dated releases were from the syndicated versions of the episodes. These are the complete original broadcast version. So each episode runs about 2 to 4 minutes longer than the other version. And like I compared just like the first 4 episodes from the first season, like the sets, to see how they looked and time difference and everything. And I was shocked to see how much was cut, especially like from the pilot episode. The complete version here in this set, it includes within the first couple minutes that was cut from the other release. There's like a pretty good body heat joke at the beginning, which I was very amused by, and I was like, no, I didn't know I was missing these jokes this whole time. So if you want the complete original version, you want to get this set. And there is one episode, I believe it's like a hour-long episode, that's Try to Remember. That's been it's an edited version of it that's from the best original elements, but every other version, I believe, is completely unedited. No music has been replaced or anything. So this is what fans have really been waiting for. And visually, I would say they're pretty much on par with the original releases. It's DVD quality, which I wish this could get a Blu-ray, but considering these were shot on video originally, I don't think it would look the best. There are been some really great upscales on Blu-ray, but I understand why this is DVD only. But if you're familiar with the old sets, I think they're about on par from what I could tell. In addition to that, I'll kind of go set by set. So this was here is the first 2 seasons. So I'll just show these off real quick. So you get this style packaging here. So that's the first two seasons. There's the back, and here's season 3 and 4 here. And it's the same situation, but with yellow. So there. Okay, so that was what encompassed these 4 releases. So we're already saving on shelf space, but in addition to that, I was very excited that we get Alf the animated series, Alf Tales, and some bonus features. So here's the back, like you can see the animated Alf. So I did not own these, so I'm very excited to pick those, to get these into this collection. So yeah, Alf animated, and then the Alf Tales, and then there is a bonus disc here. And there's one slight way this could have been improved, which I'll talk about in a second. But so you get all the animated series, all the Alf Tales. The bonus features is a brand new interview with the creative figures. It runs about a 35-minute retrospective. And they also get together for a 4-episode commentaries. It's just kind of, they put the episodes on the disc, and there's 4 commentaries for those on that. And Alf, he shows up as himself. Alf does. So you get Alf on the commentary track, and there's also kind of pop-up video style. So you get little blurbs on the screen of just like kind of adding additional text to it. This also includes, and it's the one way I think this set could have been improved, but I understand why not. This includes the Project Alf TV movie, which longtime viewers of this show will know I actually covered earlier this year on Blu-ray, and that's the only difference. Is this is on DVD here in standard definition. I covered the Blu-ray from a different label earlier this year. So if you want really the complete collection, I would also pick up that Blu-ray to go along with this complete deluxe collection. I compared the DVD version to the Blu-ray, and it's not miles away different, but the Blu-ray definitely looks a lot nicer because it is in high definition. And that release also has like an audio commentary, also with Alf and characters. So if you want the complete experience, also pick up that Blu-ray. But for Alf fans, just for the series and the animated series and spinoffs and all that stuff, this is a fantastic collection on DVD. And I think fans will be very pleased to finally get these uncut episodes, because you really were missing so many jokes for all these years. It's been about like almost 15 or almost 20 years since these original DVDs were released. So fans have been waiting a long time for this collection. So they put a lot of care into this. So anyone who's a fan of Alf, definitely pick it up. It was fun revisiting some of these episodes. I obviously did not have time to watch all these series this season, but I spot checked enough to know it's a very good release, and I think fans will be very pleased by it.
So were they like cut because there were some raunchy jokes? Like, was Alf a little bit too?
Not necessarily. I think some stuff was cut, but mostly like it was just cut for like to be put into syndication so they could sell more ads. So it's just like whenever they were re-airing these, they would just like, oh, we need to shave off so many minutes, and pretty much every sitcom does this. And so unfortunately, a few of them, or several of them, were released that way. Like different sitcoms were released where they were being released on DVD in the heyday, like in the 2000s. You would occasionally get syndicated episodes and people would be very upset. But luckily, most was released like originally broadcast, but sometimes rights issues would cause stuff to be edited and all kinds. So apparently they worked out all the music issues and everything, and they got the best versions, and now fans are happy. So I'm glad that they put it out.
Nice. I used to have an Alf doll.
Aww.
Yeah, he was very cuddly. End of story. No, that's great. That's so awesome you were able to cover that. Yeah, like you said, that's so amazing that they like kind of curated everything together. Somebody like me that like only watch the series a little bit but want to get caught up with everything. Yeah, that's awesome. Just like in one little nice curated collection. So I'm sticking with alternative, we'll call them alternative holiday Christmas movies on 4K. And this one's a much more recent one. This actually, I covered this already on Blu-ray, so my review is not going to be super in depth, but we're gonna talk about it anyways. It's Violent Night,
Hmm.
on 4K, and the back. Sorry for the glare. And nothing that exciting inside. This will have a digital code that's not in there now, but if you order it, it will have. So, yeah, I'm gonna keep my review super brief with this one. It was really fun. If you're expecting like a killer Santa Claus movie, that's not this. Although I will say I like how they take a little bit more of the Die Hard approach, rather than like something like Silent Night, Deadly Night. I think that's definitely a little bit more interesting. This is definitely one of those movies that is like, okay, it's kind of mindless, it's fun, it does kind of strive for like some pathos. I do think that there's enough kind of interesting threads going on with the hostage situation, with the world building within this very rich family and their own paramilitary hit squad. Um, Again, adds up to some really interesting sort of world building that I appreciated, especially for something that could be a very much like a modern B movie. And, this does, in a way, kind of feel like a modern grindhouse movie, but with a little bit more like substance and a little bit more like panache. I love the ending because it is just unapologetically gory and gross, and I was thinking there's no way my I could get my husband to watch this. But it's a really fun time. It's interesting because maybe tonally that doesn't really mix with some of the more heartwarming kind of elements. But I think somehow it works in a way where maybe that's a little bit jarring, but I still had a really good time. David Harbour's really great, of course. Like him in like a grizzled kind of like Santa, where he's like various stages of undress. We're not mad at that. We're here for that. I am a little disappointed that well, first, actually, before I get into that, this isn't a major upgrade. I will say, like, comparing the Blu-ray, which I guess was what, last year.
It's like in January, January, February.
Okay, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. That seems so long ago. But
Yeah.
um yeah, kind of comparing the two. I don't think it's worlds different, but I will say I do think like a little bit of like it has a better kind of overall clarity. Um Again, it already looked pretty nice on Blu-ray as it is. I mean, again, it's a modern film, shot on like some of the best equipment. So it's gonna look good even on Blu-ray. So I would say it's just marginally better, but it is still an upgrade, I would say. Um, I'm a little bit disappointed that we just get a port over of the special features. Um, Please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is just all the stuff that was on the Blu-ray release. There's nothing new to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I believe
Um,
most of the major studios don't really put too much, like, especially if it's one as recent as like eight
yeah.
months ago, then I don't think they really are like, let's get new interviews. They don't want to
Yeah,
spend that
and
money.
it's a little frustrating, I guess, because I know Universal's been doing this a lot with some of their
Mhm.
newer movies. They just dump it out on Blu-ray and then maybe use that as a testing ground to see how it does to do a 4K. So, um, if you don't own it, I think yeah, it's very much worth picking up. It's a fun movie. I, you know, I feel like this is going to be in my rotation of regular holiday movies to watch. But if you own the Blu-ray, I don't know if it's really that much. Like it's really, really worth an upgrade. If you find it on sale, I think it's very much worth it. But I think the Blu-ray is kind of fine. But yeah, it's just like I said, it's just marginally better. But again, it just depends on like how hardcore of a fan you are of this movie. So yeah, I I would have liked to have seen maybe a few other bonus things just to make this kind of worth some people maybe double dipping. But yeah, it's a fun movie. So like if you have, like I said, if you haven't seen it or you're kind of wanting to wait for a 4K release, it's a good time. It's a really fun Christmas movie.
Yeah, I just Universal, stop screwing around. Just give us the 4K whenever it originally is released. Like we've done this with Black Bone, Cocaine Bear, Megan, like so many releases. I'm fully expecting Renfield and Last Voyage of the Demeter to come out next year, and
Mhm.
it's just so frustrating because fans have like it makes it a bummer to be a collector, just be knowing like, oh, we're being screwed with just to like strung along. So, but I'm glad they did release it on 4K, but it's just a bummer they didn't originally. That's all I'm saying. My next title, I think this is probably my favorite discovery of this episode. Really love this movie. This is from Fun City Editions. This is T.R. Baskin from, I believe it's 1971. And so here is a exclusive slipcover that if you order this initial pressing, you will get. Here's the artwork underneath. And this actually has some really interesting artwork. I believe it's from other territories underneath, which I will show off by turning it around and showing you, because sometimes whenever I just hold it up, there's like a glare more. So here's one version of the alternate art. And then there's another version here, which I'm amused because this one just calls it A Date with a Lonely Girl down here, which I guess they didn't know what to do with T.R. Baskin and other territories, but that's the woman's name, played by Candice Bergen here. This is a nice booklet with an essay from film critic Kat Sachs. So get here, and it's provides some great insights into the film and kind of its overlooked quality. This was written and produced by Peter Hyams, who did movies like Busting and Running Scared. And it was directed by Herbert Ross. Peter Hyams actually provides a new interview on this that runs about 15 minutes, in which he kind of like talks about his how Herbert Ross treated his original script and all that stuff. It's like nothing too like too much animosity or anything, but it did kind of like go against kind of what he wanted with a little bit with this movie. But I think overall it was for the best because this movie is really great. And what it is Candice Bergen plays T.R. Baskins, who is a woman, a young woman who has just moved, come from like I believe it's like Pennsylvania, and come to Chicago to move to the big city and try to make her way in the world. But then she comes to realize that she faces all these obstacles that comes with like being a person in a new big city that's like being swallowed up and stuff. But what sets us apart from like the new like fish out of water tale is T.R. Baskins. She is a very kind of like she's a very interesting character because she's very sarcastic. She's very very dry, very witty, and a lot of people just don't know what to do with her a lot of the times. But this has a lot of humor that's very low key that I just really enjoyed. There's a lot of really great character scenes, and this is all kind of framed within. This isn't really a spoiler because it's kind of set up at the top. She doesn't set out to be a prostitute, but she kind of gets into a situation where people believe she is a prostitute. So this is framed throughout a conversation she is having with this guy who has called her up and like recommended by his friend, played by Peter Boyle from like Young Frankenstein and Everybody Loves Raymond. So she's kind of having this rendezvous with him, but it's not strictly a sexual encounter. It's like more of her like doing her kind of witty, wry, acerbic humor, and there's a connection between them, but mainly it's just her kind of telling what her story is, and you get to see her trying to find employment and lodge, like where she's going to live and all this stuff. And it's just interesting to watch this woman, how her development. grows throughout this process. And it's hard to really explain why this movie is so charming and lovely, but it just really hit me in a specific way where I was like, ooh, I really love this movie. And it made me have a new appreciation for Candice Bergen, who is an actress I've always really liked, but this just kind of made me have a new appreciation because she is so like straight faced, acerbic in this. It's just incredible. And if you like a movie like along the veins of like an unmarried woman or anything like that, like prime 70s, like proto feminist, but like just really clever and like honest. I think you would really like this. Definitely kind of that Paul Mazursky type of script. Highly recommended. But this never really made much of an impression whenever it came out. Even whenever I look on Letterboxd, there's like 30 reviews written for it. I think there's more views, but just like not a lot of people are talking about this movie. But they really should. This comes from a new 4K restoration of the original 35 millimeter original camera negative. It's a really nice looking transfer. I didn't notice any blemishes or anything. It's been like all the natural film grain is retained, but everything else seems to be pretty much perfect. So what you could want from like a kind of gritty 70s film. And this comes with a new audio commentary from two podcast hosts who are do a podcast on 70s film. They provide a commentary track, which is pretty entertaining. The aforementioned 15-minute interview of Peter Hyams. There's also, like I said, the booklet. And overall, this is a really, really great release. I did not have this movie on my radar at all, but it is one that I've just started like messaging certain people that I think would really like this and just being like, have you seen this? I think you'd really like this. So I'm just kind of like starting to proselytize about this movie. I like it a lot. So T.R. Baskin, if it sounds interesting to you at all, if you're a Candice Bergen fan or a fan of early 70s kind of like feminist cinema, definitely check this one out. It's a really, really good discovery.
I mean, as long as it's not Carol Baskins, I guess I'm into it.
I'm not gonna lie. I kept telling my wife, I was like, "There's this movie coming in," and every time I think of it, I just think of it like that bitch Carol Baskins, and I'm just like, I need to get this out of my head.
And now I just put it right back.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm sticking with the Universal 4K train. This is George Lucas's American Graffiti 50th Anniversary Edition. Back. Same artwork. You were wondering what the discs look like. So yeah, I know this had a I was trying to really be open-minded with this movie because I'm like, this is not really a movie for me. Like it's very nostalgic for a certain time, a certain place, maybe a certain America that may or may not have really existed. And I I will say, like, watching it for the first time with this 4K release, I liked it. I think that I love the performances. I think like Ron Howard, Richard Dreyfuss. It's so funny seeing Harrison Ford like maybe like third build with like a bunch of other people. Like he's not really huge in this, but of course this is like pre Star Wars, pre Indiana Jones. You just covered Witness last week. But yeah, it's fun to see him in there. I love Wolfman Jack's cameo in this. He was, of course, a really famous 50s and 60s era DJ. Um, and yeah, I think that it's really charming in that regard. I just found it really hard to connect with this scenario because it's like I'm not really a car person. I'm not really like, it's all just very like white and heteronormative, and I don't know. But I enjoyed it. I thought it had a great soundtrack. Like along with The Big Chill, and there's probably other movies that just have like these really epic kind of soundtracks. You know, this is certainly one of them. I thought it was fine. I'm not like, again, I am not the target audience for this. I do love the movies where it's sort of like encapsulates that, like, all right, we're, it's like one last hurrah before like adulthood, before, we really get on with our lives. And it's like this one sort of like night of fun and hijinks and all this crazy stuff. So yeah, I do like that. It's fine. Again, I know I'm not the target audience for this. I know a lot of people were really excited about this release. I think I was reading this had um, an international 4K release prior to the American 4K release. So I know a lot of people were like really hoping that we would get one, and now we do. So I know the Blu-ray was pretty notoriously bad. I've never owned it on any other format, but I was trying to do a little homework on like how this has improved or not improved. Apparently, the consensus is nobody liked the Blu-ray release. um, I think the 4K release looks really nice. I mean, again, it's one of those shot on 35. I think it looks really nice. It has that nice sort of fine grain. You don't get a lot of like over HDRing. I think like the skin textures look really nice and natural. This takes place at night, so I think like having that like boost in clarity is really good. I mean, you really do notice a lot of the details. This is sort of like the town where everybody has these amazing cars. I mean, I know they're going to be vintage because it's set in 62, but like everybody just has these cherry, like beautiful cars, like right off the, lot, whatever. But, anyways, you get that nice detail. And I will wager to say that this is probably much better than the much like hated Blu-ray release. So if you were kind of wondering if that were the case, I think, it's probably safe to say, this is a good upgrade. As far as features, I think these are all port overs from like previous DVD and Blu-ray releases. The screen test is really an interesting one. They have a making of. We do have a commentary with George Lucas. He's just talking about Jar Jar a lot and how Jar Jar is the key to everything. Um, so it's a little weird, but just go with it. He did put some dewbacks back into the in the racing scene because that was his original vision. Okay, I'll stop. I'll stop. Uh, but no, again, I didn't necessarily connect with the movie, but I think it was well made. I think that if you sort of grew up in that certain time and place and everything, I mean, the cast just has this chemistry that is like off the charts. Like just seeing everybody play and bounce off each other is just really spectacular. And it's such an interesting thought experiment to think that like if Star Wars, the first Star Wars had not really taken off, like how what would George Lucas's career be like if he wasn't kind of just stuck in Star Wars all the time? Like what other movies would he have made? Like I don't know. It's kind of an interesting what if. There is fun Easter eggs. One of the cars has a THX 138 plate, which as a nerd, I'm like spotted right away. But yeah, it's fun if you kind of want to see like George Lucas like not doing Star Wars and just him and Coppola reveling in like 50s and 60s nostalgia. Yeah, this is fun. And I guess it is applicable to one of those like everything's about to change, so we're just gonna have one fun, crazy, last hurrah kind of thing. And yeah, again, the cast is great, looks great, sounds great. Again, if you want to burn that previous Blu-ray, I think this is a good up.
Yeah, it's been years since I've seen that one, so I'm anxious to revisit it and see how it holds up for me. But yeah, I remember liking it, but it's been 15, 20 years, so it's been a while. Uh, um, my next title is one that I believe I'm probably more in the camp for than most people based on the reviews that I've read, but I quite enjoyed this. This is from Unearthed Films, and this is full body massage. So yeah, that's quite the cover, and a lot of people seem to describe this. They're like, it's like a soft core porn, and I don't agree with that.
I
there,
mean, it
there
looks
are
very steamy. Like this is the steamy
yeah,
corner, right?
it is a steamy corner title. But I've reviewed more pornographic titles for sure on this series. Um, but this is from Nicholas Regg, who did like The Man Who Fell to Earth and a bunch of other great titles. And this is one of his run in the '90s. Uh, I I think I reviewed one of his releases a few months ago. I think it was Cold Heaven. And I like this more. This originally, I think, may have aired on Showtime. I know there is one of the only special features on this is a TV version of the movie, which is in 720p, and is the only difference is there's no content difference since this was being aired on Showtime, but it's in kind of like a pillar box, like 4:3 instead of the 16:9, which the high definition transfers in. But what this basically is, so it's Mimi Rogers and Brian Brown. Mimi Rogers plays a woman who she like works like an art dealer place, like she's an art dealer, and she gets these weekly massages from a guy who you come to learn that she's been having like a little, not quite an affair with, but just kind of like instances with, and just kind of like sexual encounters with. And one day, without any notice, this new massage therapist, played by Brian Brown, he shows up, saying he's covering her main therapist's spot, and she kind of has to deal with that and figure out like if she's comfortable with him, like giving her a massage, and just kind of like acclimate to his energy. And she does like let him in and starts to let him give her a massage. But what this really is like a really like a kind of like a pot boiler, like two-hander drama where these two characters are getting like a crash course, like intimate conversation with one another, and that is coupled with the intimate act of like putting hands on a person. And the Brian Brown character, the masseuse, he is kind of an abrasive character, but not in like a off-putting way. He's very challenging and kind of like challenges Mimi Rogers' character to kind of like confront some of her beliefs. And this movie is accused of also being kind of a little bit pretentious and like overly philosophical, which I kind of agree with. But the intimacy, like the quick intimacy between the two, and I'm not talking just about like sexual, but just like the palpable, like emotional intimacy that's broken down through touch, like while uh like she is like mostly naked. She's covered with a towel for a little while, and then she admits that she feels encumbered by the towel, so she just wants that off of her and stuff. And that kind of like that also kind of changes their dynamic in a certain way, which is interesting. And so there is a lot of like topless Mimi Rogers at different points. Yeah, most of the time she's down on a massage table and you don't see a lot, but there are other instances. But this isn't like a sexual thing. It's more just like an intimate thing. And the conversations that they get into and their dynamics throughout this movie, which isn't overly long, it's like an hour and a half. I just like the way I like really talky dramas. It's like a very steamy, like extra, like intimate version of like Before Sunrise or something like that. It's just like kind of just like these two characters coming to know each other in a very strange way. And I like the conversations that they have and their dynamics and how they shift. And throughout this, both characters are kind of having flashbacks to certain points in their lives with other people, and how it kind of corresponds with what they're talking about. So you get to know a little bit through flashbacks what each of them have went through, and just kind of their vulnerability and all that stuff. So I liked it. I thought it was very entertaining. It's not like it is titillating, but it's not like exhibitionist. It's not like it's not exploitative. Is I guess what I'm saying. Like it, I think it's tastefully done, especially since you are dealing with a director like Nicholas Ray. I think it's very good. This high definition transfer comes from a 2K scan. And it looks very nice and natural, and I didn't notice anything like compression artifacts or anything of that sort. It looks a lot better than the 720p version for the TV version, which also looks good, but the full high definition version looks better. There's like a stills gallery and a trailer. That's the only other thing. There's no commentary or anything like that, but you do get this alternate version of a movie if you caught it on Showtime and wanted to see that version originally, just like the way it looked like it on old TV. You can see it that way, but Unearth Classics, they did a really nice job on this one. I gotta admit, I was skeptical when this was announced and I saw this cover and stuff, and I was just like, do I want to try this out? But I had faith in the director and I was rewarded. I really liked it. And I think it's a little bit slow paced for a lot of audiences, but it worked for me. I dug it. So if you're interested, check it out. I think it's a pretty good time. And yeah, it's a little bit steamy and you'll have fun. It's good.
Nice. And I do think that's really interesting when you were saying it was more about the emotional underpinnings of something that's, maybe not overtly sexual, but can be gratifying in ways that are not necessarily like exploitative or
Yeah.
that's interesting. So I don't have a good transition from that to this.
Good.
My next title is a 50s monster movie.
Nice.
And I was really pleasantly surprised. I'm really excited to get into this. So this is It. You have to yell it because of the exclamation point. Terror from Beyond Space. We got a beautiful slipcover. As we always say, if you want one with a slipcover, you probably want to order that kind of early. We have some really nice special features. This actually, so this has three new commentary tracks, and then I believe the other features were port overs from the previous 2015 release, which I will get into a little bit later. But we do have a double-sided art for this. So here's the back's the same, and if I can get it open. So there is the other artwork. So this pretty famously was said to sort of be a little bit of the inspiration for Dan O'Bannon and Ridley Scott's Alien. Ridley Scott, of course, directed, but Dan O'Bannon was the writer. And I can kind of see that because while they're very different movies, the base premise is a rogue alien trapped in a space station with astronauts. And I think that this movie definitely, I think, takes a lot of inspiration from The Thing from Another World. But while I think that's ultimately a better movie, I really like this. I love the premise of you have this astronaut that is like the lone survivor of this creature, and he's gone through hell. We never see actually like what happened previously. It's one of those sort of show don't tell kind of things, unfortunately. But we assume that he kind of battled this thing, and they find him alone. They, for some reason, just assume that he went crazy and killed everybody. So there is a crew sent to take him back to Earth for court martial. And when you know it, the creature pops up to say hello again to his friend and to murder some people. And they're like, "Oh yeah, maybe you're innocent after all." So I think what this movie does right is I think the creature looks really cool, and credit to where credit's due. Not only is this design nice, but like they purposely kind of keep it in the shadows, and like whenever there is light, it's this like key lighting, which is like very like noirish. They play a lot with shadows and light with the creature. And again, when if you have it in harsh light, you'll probably see all the seams, all the, little like flaws in it. So, um, and it's a very brisk movie at only an hour and 9 minutes. It goes by really quickly. I having said that, there are kind of parts where I think the pacing could have maybe used a little bit more like giddy up. It was just very like it has such a great momentum and it builds this tension because again, we're only hearing about this creature and what he did previously. And we as an audience know that shit's gonna happen again. But I think once the creature's introduced, I think they kind of paint themselves into a corner in a way where it runs out of steam a little bit. And, there is stuff sort of, again, borrowed from the thing from another world where they like try to electrocute him. I mean, this time it wasn't really that successful, but I don't know. It's a little like just kind of do your own thing, like keep your eyes on your own paper. But
Mhm.
if especially if you're a fan of like the Alien franchise, like there is also kind of some elements from Aliens that you can kind of see in here as well. Again, I don't want to spoil everything if you haven't seen it. Overall, I think it's a fun movie. I think that it definitely could have been better, but I think as far as like a very atmospheric 50s film with a cool looking monster. It's kind of gross when they like the one scientist is like it like drinks every fluid from your body. And I think just hearing that, it's just it gives you the like willies. Like if you really kind of stop to kind of think about that, how like messed up that would be. So as I said, Olive Film originally put this out in 2015. I don't have that release, but what I gather is with a lot of Olive releases, their transfer maybe was a little hit or miss. So we get a brand new 2K from the 35 millimeter print. It looks great. I won't say it's flawless. There are a couple of times of like a little bit of scratches, a little bit of like where the grain is maybe a little bit too heavy, but not too much. Like overall, I think it's really a crisp, clean looking presentation. Maybe to its detriment, like you really can see the monsters like how it looks. And again, it's cool looking, but like when you're seeing it in this like brand new 2K thing, you can kind of see how it's a little cheesy looking. But yeah, I think it looks great. It sounds great. We do get like was it yeah, three new commentary tracks, all from film historians. And I believe the featurette was maybe a port over from the Olive release. And then we have a trailer. So I love this because I think the as far as I can tell, the transfer is much better than the Olive release. I think the packaging is definitely a little bit nicer. And again, more bang for your buck. You get three new commentary tracks, and they're like some heavy hitters that are on these tracks, like Bob Burns, who's a famous film historian. He also is the curator of a lot of props from Alien, probably props from this film, many others. You have like Tom Weaver, who's one of the foremost experts on like 40s and 50s horror films and sci-fi. So having had a chance to go through all three commentary tracks, but I'm really excited to kind of dig into those. So yeah, I think this is a great release. I think it's not a very long movie, but I think that Kino did a really nice job of luring me in with like some more features and again a better overall like visual presentation.
Yeah, that's one I didn't own, but I was very interested once I saw Kino announce that they were putting it out. So definitely checking that out and very excited about that. I love that era of sci-fi like cheesiness, but also kind of like still very effective. Like sounds like a good release. My next title is from Sony. This is a Sony Pictures Classics release of David Cronenberg's Spider, uh, which as I was logging it on Letterbox last night, I saw that you aren't a huge fan of, but I was very interested in this. I've been interested ever since I was like a teenager and this came out. And I like remember back when we used to have video stores, kid. I would always like cruise the aisles and see this cover, and I was like, "Ooh, this is gonna be disturbing." And I really wanted to fit this in before Halloween, but I ran out of time. But then after I did get to it, a few days after Halloween, I realized I didn't really miss out because this is not a scary movie. This is not what I thought it was going to be at all. I didn't really know anything about it. I just knew David Cronenberg and this creepy ass cover here. But it's more like a psychological drama, not even like a psychological thriller, more just a drama. It's Ray Fiennes playing a character who's very nearly nonverbal. He is just a man who is kind of seems to be broken down. He is going to stay at this facility slash kind of like a halfway house for like mentally challenged people, or just mentally unwell people. You don't really know specifically what's wrong with him. And Cronenberg, there's a commentary on this, and he kind of says that they tried to keep his diagnosis a little opaque to try to not color the audience's expectations of what they were like getting into with this character. But basically, he is a character who is exploring his past trauma and trying to untangle a lot of what happened to him back from his childhood. So a lot of time Ray Fiennes is on screen just kind of observing his childhood, of him as a young boy. And you have a great Miranda Richardson who plays his mother, and Gabriel Byrne who plays his father. And then there's a young version of himself, and he's kind of like piecing together all these different like events that happened in his past to figure out, you try to clue himself and the audience into like how he got to where he is now, where he's just kind of almost like a shell of a man. And you do have scenes in the present of him at the facility interacting with his charge nurse, which I believe that's Lynn Redgrave, which she does a really good job in her limited role. And he has like some people that he that basically talk to him in the facility. He doesn't really talk to them very much, but whereas I thought this would be something kind of like really messed up and like horrific and all kinds, it is more kind of straightforward, observing how abuse and like mental and can color who you are and how it impacts your life. Because his father was kind of and it's also left a little bit up to an interpretation, but the main facts are that his father a lot of times would just spend a lot of times outside of the house, like at the bar drinking. He would like have some affairs, and his mother was at home kind of dealing with being almost like a single mother while her husband's out doing God knows what. And piecing together where things exactly went wrong. And I don't want to spoil anything. There's some key events that happen that kind of like sets off a chain of reactions, and how that eventually ends up is it's interesting. It's interesting. Like I said, I'm trying to be very vague about this, but I think overall, if you approach this knowing that is not horrific or like really meant to be a thriller in any notable way, there's like one scene of violence in this, but other than that, I think it's more, if you're thinking of Cronenberg, you need to think of more recent Cronenberg, almost like even more of like A Dangerous Method, or I think even A History of Violence would be too violent for like that comparison, but more so like I think A Dangerous Method would honestly be one of his more like comparable, just because there's nothing too crazy in that one. But Ray Fiennes is great. The other cast members, especially Miranda Richardson's excellent. I was engaged once I revisit this, knowing what to expect from it. I think I'll like it even more, but I did really quite like it. It's just kind of like a psychological exploration. It's shot very well. It has a very interesting aesthetic. Cronenberg does a really nice job bringing this movie together and making it you feel a little bit uneasy. And I think that he draws a lot from the text that you might have had to fill in with on the page. So I think it works really well. Like I said, there's a audio commentary that he reveals a lot of good information in. There's about 3 featurettes that run about 8 to 13 minutes in length, that are archival, perfectly good. The audio visual video looks really nice. It doesn't seem to be like a complete like 4K remaster or anything, but it looks very nice and natural and looks very good. The audio is DTS 5.1 sounds. It's not completely immersive, but it's not that type of movie. It's like there's sounds in the rear channels and stuff, but it sounds really good. Um, Overall, if you're a fan of Cronenberg, and not just his most horrific body horror, like mind fucks, like psychosexual stuff, this is still a good movie. It's just not typical of him, and I think this was just recently, like at the end of last year, released on Blu-ray. So I think fans have really been wanting this for a while. So I'm glad it's released on high definition for those who do want it.
Yeah, I was actually really excited that when I saw this on the sheet because I had seen this in the theater. I saw this as a teenager, and this was when I was really kind of getting out there exploring stuff with like Cronenberg and like David Lynch and all these like auteurs. And I was lucky enough to have a art house cinema that was like maybe 20, 30 minutes away.
Mhm.
So I would try to see all these kind of movies when I could. Um, Again, I think I did have this sort of expectation in my head versus reality, but I do kind of want to give this another chance. I do want to check this out. So I'm glad that like Sony has re-released this. This was one that I almost pulled the trigger on like a really cheap DVD a while back. So I'm glad that I held off. So yeah, it's great if you're also like a Cronenberg completist, and
Mhm.
so I think Brandon Cronenberg should remake this. I think that would be interesting. Um,
Yeah.
like get me a goth as like like the main character. Let's go.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a pair of titles from Warner Archive. The bounty from them last couple months have been very robust, and I'm not complaining because we both really love their releases. My first title is the pre-code Joan Crawford film Dance Fool's Dance. And here is the back. We do get a really nice documentary, which is a really fun special feature. So this takes place in the 20s. This is sort of Joan Crawford's kind of flapper girl kind of era. Um, Even though this was like early 30s, she was still sort of playing these like very uh free-spirited characters. She would definitely have different like I don't know, like kind of phases in her career, but this was still kind of like the get your flapper dress on and do the shimmy or whatever. I don't know. So this takes place in the 20s, and this Joan Crawford comes from this very rich family. Um, Her and her brother never had to work a day in their lives. Their father lost everything in the stock market crash and dies. And basically, their whole entire lives are like uprooted. They kind of have to start from scratch. Joan Crawford is like this, like real, like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna like pick myself up by my bootstraps and I'm gonna be okay. The brother ends up going into organized crime, as you do. Um,
Mhm.
and It's kind of interesting because she becomes a journalist and he becomes sort of like a very low level crime guy, and their worlds kind of collide in a kind of an interesting way, with her job as like being a reporter and him more or less being caught up in a news story and a murder. So and it's a really fascinating movie, especially when you consider when it was made, talking about like the Great Depression, which we were still like going through, but like people still feeling the effects from the stock market crash, very wealthy people suddenly not being very wealthy anymore. And I like how the movie kind of tackles how their like friends all kind of abandon them. They just look down on them almost immediately because they're like poor now. I think it's a really interesting conversation to have almost in real time. like these things were kind of really happening, maybe as sort of like a little bit of a microcosm of these events. But yeah, no, I think it's like a very charming film. It is not a breezy comedy. It's more of like a drama with a few maybe comedic bits to sort of lighten the mood, because you would always kind of have that in these early 30s films. Crawford's character is very independent. She is kind of a badass. It makes a point to say early on in the movie, she has a suitor who's very rich that could make her very comfortable. He's like, I'll tell you what, I'll marry you. You'll be set. But she's like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to make my own way. And they end up kind of really respecting each other for that. And again, it shows this how, there is some movies about sort of landing a millionaire or marrying up. Crawford herself kind of played some of these characters that, when they were women with limited resources, you use the agency that you had to kind of game the system that's already kind of rigged against you. But I think that's a really interesting inverse. So again, that was kind of fascinating. Is it the most original or amazing story? No. Is it really entertaining? Yes. Joan Crawford and Clark Gable, this is their first pairing together, and they were infamously like very much in love. They had a steamy affair. So yeah, you get to see Joan Crawford like dancing. She's a chorus girl at one point, before she becomes a writer to sort of like eke out a living. That's kind of worth buying the movie just, for that scene alone. But it's a good time. So as far as it looks, again, I really have no complaints here. It just looks beautiful. Again, it's from 1931, so it's almost 100 years old at this point, but I really didn't notice anything in the way of like scratches or artifacts. Everything looked really nice. There maybe is some points where things look maybe a little bit too soft, or maybe not as well defined as it could be, but nothing that, again, I think really is distracting or kind of stands out. And it sounds good as well. Again, we have a really nice documentary supplement and a couple classic cartoons. It's always fun. And my next title is much heavier. It's Before Night Falls. It's about a famous Cuban author and poet who was gay and living under a Cuban dictatorship when like they did like poets, they didn't like gay people. It was like not a great time for him. But Bardez plays the titular character, and yeah, if you ever want to see him in a nude scene, like there's tons of those. Just as a FYI, but the movie's really fascinating. So I did a little pre-research on this poet and author. I really didn't know a lot about him, but his story is really interesting. I think the movie tells his story in a really fascinating way. It does a really fine job, I think, of showing you glimpses of his life. Like it starts out his early life. There's kind of a gross scene with him and a sex worker when he's like 10. Mm-hmm. And they kind of show more than what I think they probably could have, but like, like we get the point. But anyways, I mean, we do kind of slowly learn that like, he's this poet, he's gay, he's not really not hiding it, but he's still kind of playing this game of like what he can get away with the federales, and he eventually gets caught and sent to prison. He writes one of his most famous works while he's in prison, and it's just a fascinating story. It's really jarring to see Johnny Depp in this. Mm-hmm. Like he's not in it very long, and when he is, it's like very sexual. Like, I'm saying you've seen this, right? Like, didn't you just cover this?
Yes, I did on my standalone Warner Archive video. Whenever Johnny Depp was in the movie, I felt stupid at first because I did not realize he was playing dual roles at first. So I was just like, how did this character suddenly get in this position? And I was like, wait, this is a different character.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because that is also like a little jarring, but Yeah, no, I think it was like it's such a heartbreaking movie though. Like I love how again this movie's like over like 2 hours and 13 minutes. So I do like how you really get to know this character. You get to kind of know how he like operates, and it's just the oppression that these people had to go through was just insane. Like just meeting up at someone's house for like a poetry reading with other poets could like land you in a lot of hot water. That's absolutely insane. This is well directed, well shot. I love the cinema verite approach where everything kind of feels like documentary like, especially like when they flash back to his like childhood. It has this kind of handheld, almost like it's kind of wild. Like the father finds out he's a poet, and the dad just flips out and like chops a tree down. Like that's wild. I'm like, I don't get it. But anyways, it's a really interesting movie. Again, I'm somebody that like I didn't really know a lot about this poet, but the movie does a really great job at sort of encapsulating his life, his struggles, kind of reflecting on like how far we've come as far as like gay rights and being able to just exist, and assemble and all that good stuff. So this movie was from 2000. It looks really good. I don't know if it's just by virtue of how it's shot, but there's some like scenes that maybe look a little washed out at times. But again, I don't think that's necessarily the transfer's fault. I think it looks overall really nice. Now we do get a lot of really good features here. We get a commentary track. We get some interviews. Commentary track is great. That's one that I highly recommend. It added a lot of information about this person that I didn't really, again, didn't know a lot about. So, very different titles, but very much worth picking up. I like how Warner Archives has a little something for everybody. I mean, not a great double feature, but just, standalone, these are pretty good.
Yeah, I enjoyed both of those titles to various degrees, but yeah, I think Warner Archive. I love the variety that you can get from
Mhm.
them every time, and just always excited to see what they put out every month. Before Nightfalls was an unexpectedly good transition into my next title, because the latter half of that movie, a large portion of it takes place in the prison, like we talked about. And this is a prison drama from Sony Pictures Classics. This is Carandiru. I believe it's from 2003. It's a Brazilian drama. So this is set at the titular prison, Carandiru. It was a famous prison where it was, I believe, it's the biggest prison in Latin America, and this is just kind of from the perspective of it's based on a memoir from a doctor who actually went into the prison and got to know a lot of the prisoners and try to treat their various ailments, and kind of documented a lot of their realities of living in this huge complex. And one thing I actually learned from the commentary track from the director is I didn't really pick up on this when I was watching it, but it seemed like most of these people that were in this facility, this prison, weren't actually like convicted prisoners. They were people who were awaiting trial, but a lot of times that they would be awaiting trials for like years and years just because of the system. But I just found it interesting because I didn't really pick up on that kind of like little bit of information when I was watching the movie, but as an extra layer. But back to the doctor, he's documenting all these prisoners, and this is a pretty lengthy movie. It's just shy of 2.5 hours, which I did not realize when I threw it on. I was like, oh, okay, I'm in for a ride. Let's do this. But this is all basically leading up to an infamous prison riot, which left a bunch of people dead. I don't want to like give away everything or like how it resolves, but it's leading up to this huge historical riot. But that's not the main focus of the movie. For the first 2 hours or so of this to about 2.5 hour runtime, you are just following, getting to know these prisoners, these various prisoners, and these characters on like a very personal level. It humanizes them without excusing what they've done and stuff, and you get kind of a little bit of a flashback with each of their like different people's lives, and you kind of learn how they ended up where they are. Most are seem to be there for good reasons, but they are still human, and at the same time, they are kind of living in this kind of situation where there's like rampant AIDS epidemic because there's just a bunch of rape and like shared needles because there's a bunch of drug use and all kinds of stuff going on. And then there's also other infestations and everything. So you kind of get this portrait of this prison system that, yes, you've seen this kind of prison drama before, but then you've also, it kind of gives a little extra added layer to things. And there's some very colorful personalities in here, and they're not treated like terribly by the authorities. Like, you don't get a lot of, it's not the typical horrible guards inflicting pain on these people. It's just more so the situation that they find themselves in, and just kind of like a rundown facility, and just how having that many, like such an overcrowded space is just kind of like has like a fuse just waiting to be lit for something to go off, just because like things can seem calm for a little while, but maybe one disagreement will happen and it'll just like set something off, just because it's prison and it's awful. And it's a really good movie. I really liked it. I think it's a very powerful movie in many regards, and the acting's really good. There's one character in here. I'm pretty sure he was on the Netflix show Narcos. I'm not familiar enough with him to know his name off the bat, but I believe I've seen him on all the marketing material. And there's Rodrigo Santoro, who was like in 300 and like an infamously bad episode of Lost. But other than that, it's mostly just Brazilian actors and character actors, and they all do a very good job. And the direction is good for a nearly 2.5 hour movie. The pacing is really strong, just because each time you meet a character, like you get a brief time, like amount of time with them, and you do return to them throughout. It's not just like a vignettes thing, but if you're not interested in like one particular storyline, you'll get to know a little bit more about another character in probably like 10 or 15 minutes. So it's a real rich tapestry of narratives, and overall, very solid movie. As I said, there's a commentary track from the director. There's a couple of real life archival videos, one from like the prison being imploded after it was eventually shut down, and then like another from like the 1920s of like seeing like the prison back and then, which is pretty interesting. There's also a pretty lengthy archival making of featurette that runs about 32 minutes and some deleted scenes in standard definition. Sony does a decent job with this. I wish they would have utilized the file size a little bit more, because it seems like the encoding was a little bit, it didn't give a lot of room to breathe like as I think it should. There's not too much in the way of compression artifacts or black crush or anything, but I think this could have been better optimized to be a more visually appealing disc. Overall, I think it's a decent transfer, but it's not their best. Audio wise, you get the original Portuguese in 5.1. You also get an alternate French track and an alternate, which also in 5.1. Then you also get a Spanish language track in DTS 2.0. So I chose the original or 5.1 Portuguese, so that sounded really good. But overall, it's a pretty decent release. It's just recently come to high definition, and I think anyone who's been waiting for it will be overall pleased, even though I think it could have been optimized slightly better. But overall, it's a really good movie, and if you like prison dramas, I think it's worth a watch.
Yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. Like, that is definitely one of those that was definitely not on my radar, but like sounds like maybe I should check it out. So my next title is one that was really excited that not only did this get a standalone Blu-ray release, but also a 4K release, and that is for The Sandman. And oh God, this is such a great show. I assume everyone's kind of familiar with The Sandman, but basically, or like, again, the famous comic by Neil Gaiman. But it is about Morpheus, who is trapped on Earth, and he is finally kind of set free and has to kind of rebuild and basically regain the dream world, because his absence kind of throws everything out of balance. There is other kind of godlike beings. This is a very interesting magical world. And yeah, this series is kind of amazing. I love how you have that main thrust of, okay, Morpheus predicament. He has to kind of keep leveling up, regaining his items. You have some really interesting characters and foils. But I think, kind of like the comics, there are these kind of not necessarily standalone things, but they're things that feel like just vignettes that also kind of fold into the overall narrative really well. And that's kind of how the comics were. They would kind of segue into maybe something that's not in the main kind of story, but again, feels very much organic to that world, if that kind of makes sense. And like there is this beautiful animated episode that I just think is really awesome. It's one of those that there's a couple episodes in particular that really stayed with me, like that episode, the animated episode, the episode with the convention of serial killers was fucking wild. Like very unnerving. The one with Death, him hanging out with Death and like her taking the baby that just died of like sudden infant death or something. There's like SIDS or something. Yeah, sudden infant shit like that kind of stays with me because it's done in a way that feels very much poetic and deep without coming off as pretentious. And it feels very much in line with the source material. Gaiman was, of course, very intimately involved in this. You can tell there's a lot of love put into this series. So we do get, well, first of all, this we got the gatefold discs. That's nice. No digital copy, no Blu-ray as well. It's just 4K, but there is a standalone Blu-ray if you are not 4K capable. There are some really nice behind the scenes featurettes. Again, I'm always a slut for commentary tracks. So I wish we could have got something, even if it was just like partial ones for episodes. But anyways, maybe down the road. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is definitely coming back, right? They did order like at
I
least
believe, yeah.
Yeah. I'm excited. I love it. This is such an amazing series. I didn't go too in depth with my review because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's just a really, I don't know if I want to say fun because it is very dour at times, but it is very intellectual and cerebral. But again, it never comes off as pretentious. Like I said, there are episodes that like I still like think about like a lot. So like that's pretty impressive for a series. And yeah, Netflix series that has a release that's amazing, especially 4K. It looks really nice. So of course, like you had to stream this to first see it, but I think it looks much better in 4K than the streaming version. This is a very visual show, so having that like high dynamic range with like colors and looks very crisp and clean. Sounds really great. Again, if I had a complaint, it would be like I wish that they had maybe done a little bit more special features. But yeah, this is an overall really nice release. Again, I'm just thankful that we have this at all, let alone a 4K release. So go to Warner Brothers for making that happen. And yeah, if you haven't seen this show, holy shit, it's amazing. Like just literally, as long as you're not like holding like an infant, like just drop everything and like run out and see it. It's great. I again, it was like something that I wanted to like not stream right away, or I wanted to see like a home video release for the first time seeing it, but like again, we don't really know what's coming out, what's not coming out, so it's nice seeing this again in 4K.
Yeah, I almost just went to see it because I haven't watched it yet. I'm glad you didn't spoil anything. So you almost lost your co-host. So. Yeah, I'm really excited that one hit 4K. I've kind of with all the Netflix price hikes, I can't keeping all these streaming services, and I don't use that one as much, so might just stick with the key stuff on physical media when I can. And Glad it got a 4K release. My next title is from Kino Lorber Studio Classics. This is the 1996 neo noir 2 Days in the Valley from director John Herzfeld. Um, so it's actually alternate art. I already changed it underneath for the double sided art. Or if you want what's on the slip cover, it's underneath here. But it's just standard Kino stuff here. So yeah, I thought this movie was pretty good, but I kind of struggled a little bit with some of the tonal balances. This kind of seems to be inspired a little bit, kind of coming off of like the Quentin Tarantino like uh ascendance, and kind of like mixing kind of the darkness with some of the absurd dark humor and all that stuff. It's a sprawling multi like pronged tale of different characters within within this seedy valley community in California. There's like hitmen and undercover cops and like asshole like Hollywood agents, and trying to remember all the archetypes, like beleaguered assistants to those agents and all kinds. There's cute pit bulls, which is one of like the highlights. You get to see a pit bull swimming in a swimming pool. It's great. I love it so much. But overall, it's a pretty decent story. It's pretty entertaining. Has a dynamite cast. This is actually one of like the big break, or I wouldn't call it really a breakout, but it is like one of the first roles that Charlize Theron ever did. So it's like her big debut. You got James Spader, Danny Aiello, Jeff Daniels, Terry Hatcher, Eric Stoltz, Glenn Headley. So many good people in this cast, and I think they are what kind of carry this along a little bit more for me. I just think like I said, the tonal balance between some of like the dark stuff that happens and kind of some of the kind of absurd humor and kind of even like lighter romantic moments. I'm just like, I'm not sure if this is gelling exactly how I want to, at least on the first viewing. Maybe I'll settle into it a little bit more upon further viewings. But overall, I think it's a little bit messy and a little bit too ambitious. But overall, I liked it. I did not love it. And I just think it's a little bit flawed and inconsistent. But like I said, the performances are really good. This it comes from a new 4K scan of the 35 millimeter original camera negative. It looks very nice. It's been cleaned up to look really great. Strong black levels, no overblown highlights, which sometimes I worry about with like these California settings with the bright sun. You don't get any blown highlights. Nice detail in all the different locations. And so, yeah, this comes with a surprising array of special features, and I'll elaborate. You do get an audio commentary with director John Herzfeld, which is your standard commentary track. He reveals a lot of great details and everything. It's a new commentary track for this release, and he seems very proud of the movie. One of the things that threw me off the most is the next thing, which is I want to get this right. It is a 35-minute interview between John Herzfeld and Sylvester Stallone, and it is new because they are old friends, like old college friends from like the University of Miami. And I was like, what the hell is going on, until I watched it and I realized they have a rich history with one another. So it is just like Sylvester Stallone, modern day Sylvester Stallone, just kind of like kicked back in a chair, smoking a cigar, talking to his old friend for 35 minutes about Hollywood, and like kind of asking him questions about this movie, but also kind of dominating the conversation in a weird way. But it's endearing just because you just like have two old friends like chilling out. So that, I think that's like alone almost worth the price of admission for this, is just for that special feature, because I did not expect to see Sylvester Stallone pop up in this movie, because he's not in this release, because he's not in this movie at all. He just wanted to be a part of the special features for his friend, which I think is fun. This also has another great addition, which is a 30-minute reunion. I think that happened a couple of years ago, which surprisingly they got Charlize to come for this reunion. Like, it's her and Glenn Headley, and a pre-directing she was a production designer on this before she was a director. Catherine Hardwicke, who did like 13 and the first Twilight movie and a bunch of other movies. So she was there. She was the production designer, and now she's a pretty well-known director. And then, of course, like John Hirschfeld, the director, and a bunch of other people. So that's a good reunion. I love hearing Charlize talk about what a big break this was for her, and she kind of makes fun of her like little like chubby face and stuff. It's endearing, and I'm glad she returned for this because a lot of these stars don't like to go back to their early careers. They just like to kind of like forget it. Like, oh yeah, I don't really want to talk. Like, I want to forget that kind of happened. But she came back. She did participate in the Q&A. She was very effervescent and great, and I loved it. There's a couple of archival special features as well, some B-roll footage and different sound bites, a making of archival thing that runs a pretty good amount. So special features wise, I don't think this can be beat for what I really wanted from this. You don't really get that from Kino that often. They usually just kind of recycle stuff and throw a new commentary track, which I love them for. You can pretty consistently bet on a commentary track, which you said you're a slut for commentary, so that's why they're one of our favorites. But just to have all these other additional special features is really cool. And with the good audiovisual presentation, even with my reservations with aspects of the movie, I think this is a solid release for 2 Days in the Valley. If you're a fan or have been wanting it, I think you'll be very pleased. So yeah, check it out if you like kind of 90s neo-noir stuff. It's just not the best, but it's also far from the worst. I've seen a lot worse, but it's okay.
Nice. That yet again something that I had never even heard of, but that cast is pretty amazing, and that sounds like a very stacked release. Speaking of stacked releases, so my final title I wanted to save, like bring out the big guns for the end. We have Psych, the complete series, plus the 3 movies. So I was reading up on it, and apparently there is plans for 6 total movies. I don't know, but yeah. So I know we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, but I don't know why I was so much of an edgelord when this first came out that it did not look like something I would want to see. Enough time has kind of passed where I'm maybe just a smidge more mature, and I was like, all right, I'm finally gonna sit down. I want to check this out. Clearly, people love it, or there wouldn't be like 120 episodes and 3 movies. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. I have to say, I kind of love the sort of like modern Sherlock Holmes, where he's very observant to the point of it being like, again, he can only justify it by saying he's psychic, which I think is such a fun premise. There's a really fun chemistry between the 2 leads. I love how I was reading that the pineapple, that's sort of like the unofficial mascot for the series, came out of from like an ad lib or like an improvisation, and they kind of just went with that, which I think is fun. So here's just a idea of, so this is the first season. We do have a load of really great features. We have deleted scenes, we have bloopers, there's auditions, character profiles. So here is the layout, and we have the nice gatefold. Which, again, I know we've talked about this before, but just be super careful because these tend to break. But here are the episodes. And then along with like the accompanying like commentary tracks or any other feature. So that's a nice breakdown of everything. Again, this is kind of an older show. This was like what, 2008?
Yeah. Or if not older.
If only we had the internet to be able to tell me
that. Because I remember I've been watching this show since like the first night it aired, like the pilot. I've been with this show. I watched all 8 seasons and collected all 8 DVDs. So I'm going to be happy to upgrade. But I've been watching this show for a long time, and I really, really love it.
Nice. So like this is like thoroughly, so 2007 actually. So I wasn't too far off. And having said that, there are definitely jokes where I'm like, but overall, it's not bad. I mean, I think the jokes are really great. I feel like the quips are just kind of mind-boggling at times, just how like quick-witted and how sharp the writing is. Is every episode kind of perfect? No. Again, 120 episodes. I'm not fully through this massive set yet, but I'm working my way. I'm up to like season 3 now. I do really appreciate the fact that we start to learn a lot more about these, like the main characters, especially. Oh my God, this is so awful. I'm blanking on. You're the expert, the main guy, the like quippy.
Sean.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sean and Gus.
Yeah. Okay. And yeah, no, I appreciate the fact that like we get like his dad was such an asshole, and he becomes like a really interesting kind of foil slash his honing in on this is because his dad was a detective and was like maybe overly brutal in like, we're training you to be this human, greatest detective by being observant. Like there's a really great like pilot where I think it kind of like opens up with just how next level and shitty his dad was to him. And I like how they kind of are growing that character and that dynamic, like father son dynamic, which I mean, again, was something that I didn't really appreciate at the time that it had something like a layer like that to it. So I think it gives it a little bit more depth than you might, but it's also very fun and funny. And I think it's kind of interesting because, now with like Poker Face and I feel like there's a ton of these like quirky detective shows. This kind of seemed like it was at the forefront of that genre. So, massive set. I mean, again, so many features. I believe that these are all probably, you could probably speak to this, but they are probably all port overs from the original releases yet. But again, upgraded to Blu-ray. I think they look really nice, especially for like an older TV show, kind of up converted to Blu-ray. Sounds really good as well. Again, a lot of love is put into the features. I feel like the showrunners and everybody involved really appreciates the fans. And again, we have the 3 movies. I'll just show this off really quick. Now, have you've seen the movies? I'm assuming.
I have not. I was going to say that I have not seen the movies because they were, I believe, exclusive to Peacock whenever it was first starting, or something of this. And I never got around to getting with that. But I'm glad that I finally will be able to like close the loop on those because I've been very excited to check it out.
I thought you were gonna say you were gonna get jiggy with it, and I was like, all right, cool. No, but if you're curious, this is what the standalone movie set looks like. They are all on one disc, if you're wondering about that as well. So all honesty, haven't checked out these yet. I'm kind of working my way through this massive set. But again, I read somewhere where the vision is like 6 movies altogether, which is kind of crazy to think about. But this seems like it has such a ravenous fan base that that probably will happen. So yeah, really nice set. Like I think if you are looking for like a really great gift, or if you're just a huge fan like yourself, yeah, this is a really nice set, and I think it's a really fun show. I don't know why I was such a brat when it first came out to like not check it out, but yeah.
Yeah, I did not have that problem. I watched the hell out of that show. There are so many fun guest stars and like themed episodes throughout. You're gonna love it. I'm so excited for you to report back once you've gotten to like a lot of those really fun episodes. So love that show. So glad it's on Blu-ray. I think I said even earlier this year we were covering some show. I was like, I really want Psych to come out, and I feel like I manifested it. It's so good. I'm glad. So my next title, my final title, is from Milestone Films in association with Kino Lorber, and this is The Edge of the World from director Michael Powell of Powell and Pressburger fame and just all his own fame as well. One of the most famous British directors. Here is the interior artwork, which there. I think I showed off the back, but here you go again. If not, This takes place on a Scottish isle back, I believe, in like the late 1800s. And what is interesting about this is it is an island that is so secluded from the mainland that it's almost like living in an entirely different world where there's basically nothing there but the few remaining people because it's so desolate and there's like such lacking of civilization that people have just like started fleeing from that island, and it kind of like it doesn't really drive people mad necessarily, but it does kind of like it there's just so much that's not there. And Powell captures this in a very interesting way in which it almost is like shot like a documentary, but then he kind of fits in a fictionalized narrative to go with like almost this travel log of this island. And there's like this conflict that brews between these two families, and kind of you follow how that kind of builds and eventually resolves. And but what it is mostly how they fare when they are not connected to kind of like the larger world and just kind of isolated, and how they deal with that isolation, especially with like there's like a war going on at the same time as well. There's some very breathtaking shots in here. There's like a very sheer like cliff face that a lot like you see people kind of rappelling down in like a very primitive way. And a lot of people, not while filming the movie, but like the characters, and then I guess people in real life but not on film, like died like scaling these cliffs. And they're like there's a lot of just like that's what they call like the edge of the world, because it's just like right at the edge of like just plummeting down. And the shots are beautiful. The imagery is just really awe-inspiring a lot of times. The narrative itself, it's perfectly good. I don't think it's like the best part of this narrative or this feature, but as like having a dramatic through line for this footage, I think it works very well. I'm very impressed by Powell's direction, especially, and it's not a very long movie. It's only an hour and 15 minutes long, so it doesn't overstay its welcome of trying to like draw out like this drama unnecessarily. But overall, I think it's a very effective drama, and I think as like one of his early works, I think it's very impressive, and I think anyone who's a fan of his work should definitely check it out. Especially check out this Blu-ray because it's very good. I don't know the source of this restoration. I cannot find any information like online or on the back or anything, but it looks very nice for being a film from the late 1930s, 1937 specifically. And the sound is pretty good. Some of like the Scottish accents, like you might need to turn on the English subtitles, but overall, you can mostly understand what's going on. There's some really cool bonus features. One of which I think I knew this before, but I've forgotten. But this is kind of related to something right now. So anyone who's a fan of Martin Scorsese knows that his a longtime editor is Thelma Schoonmaker. She's one of the best who's ever done it, and she is actually the widow of Michael Powell, and which is interesting because like Martin Scorsese is such a huge fan of like the Red Shoes and a bunch of other things that Powell has done. So I think that's obviously a large part of why he got together with Schoonmaker way back in the day. Anyway, she pops up on a commentary track for this one that's also with a film historian. So you get so many great insights into Powell from her, which she's a legend of her own. But she knew his thought process of like whenever he was making this film and like kind of what he was trying to do. I think she, from what I could tell from the context, it seemed like she did meet him after that fact, like a couple decades after that fact. But like obviously they had these discussions from being married, so she knew a lot of this time and kind of like reveals a lot of great information, which I think is invaluable. And then she also pops up again for some home video footage that Powell shot just like as a visitor to Scotland, and she gives some extra context to that as well, which is really cool. There's also a 6-minute short film that Michael Powell did around this time included. There is a 25-minute reunion special that aired in 1979 where he went back to this island and kind of reconnected with some of the people who was in the movie or worked on the movie. And this, like I said, it runs about 25 minutes, but it's really cool that that's included because you kind of get, it's just like a fun extra featurette. And yeah, it's a really nice array of special features. It's good to hear from Thelma, but everything is really cool in here. It's really got an audio visual presentation. Another Michael Powell movie on Blu-ray. You can't go wrong with that. So The Edge of the World, if you're a Michael Powell fan, check it out. Milestone did a really nice job with it. I don't think he'll be disappointed. Yeah, it's a really interesting movie. Check it out.
Nice. I thought you were gonna say Martin Scorsese was like talking about how much he loved Marvel and superhero movies. And a fun fact, Scorsese was eyeing up the rights for Dick Tracy way back when. So he technically would have directed a comic IP.
But Warren Beatty beat him to it.
Yeah, that, I mean, that could be a whole entire video about how crazy that whole thing was. But yeah, no, I'm a big Powell fan. I think that's really cool. I'm definitely by no means a scholar of him, like his films. I mean, Peeping Tom is like one of my all-time favorite movies. I think kind of slightly edges out Psycho, with they were both released at the same time. Who is the most famous British film director? But like Hitchcock. But anyways, that's awesome. It sounds like you were saying, it has a lot of amazing features that puts a lot of his career and his thought process, as you were saying, in perspective, with his wife contributing. That's pretty amazing. So that is our show. So we are trying, we want to try something a little different going forward. We want to hear from y'all as far as like questions for us that we will read after the show. Since this is new, I came up with a question for both of us, and it is, if you could inject yourself into any movie and like live there, what would it be?
Probably Julie and Julia, because I could have Julia Child just make some delicious food for me, because every time I watch that movie I'm like, damn, I'm hungry. So probably something where I could eat some really good food, because I am who I am and I love food. And everything else seems dangerous. So
yeah.
What about yourself?
I mean, it sounds maybe basic, but A Nightmare Before Christmas seems like such an amazing kind of world to live in. Especially when you have like that forest where you can go into any holiday world. Like, I would just stay in Thanksgiving and just overeat myself for all eternity.
We're both getting to the same place.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, chime in the comments if you want to ask us anything. It could be film related, it could be like, don't go too personal, like I'm not going to tell you boxers or briefs or what all anything like that, but
I don't give a shit, I'll do it. Briefs.
Okay. All right. Commando. Anyways, yeah, ask away, like, what our favorite whatever is. Again, apparently, Dylan will field all the spicy questions that you have. So, with that, we really appreciate the comments, the feedback. Seeing more people put eyeballs on the show is really awesome. To that end, please consider subscribing. Not only do we do this every week, but we put out a lot of great content. Everybody in the YouTube channel is just killing it with some really cool stuff. Currently, I still have some Comic-Con coverage stuff coming up. Some like really good interviews, the tease, maybe a really good unboxing video coming up, so you don't want to miss that. And as always, thank you for hanging out with us.